Nice to
So,
see you.
ladies and gentlemen, guess who we have here? We have the eclectic, the high-profile persona artist, the philosopher here in front of us, Sri Das Goravani. He looks so cool with that new style of his, fresh look, and got that artist beard going on. How are you, Das?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Das. Oh, by the way, before we get started, guys, these books are one of the gems of Jyotish, the gems available on Amazon, right? They're
Yes.
still on Amazon. Yep. So these are written by Sri Das Goravani, one of the best. Oh, hey, there you go, and that, and that's why he's the coolest.
My Kapiel Award.
The legendary award. So Das, I was actually browsing through this book, and man, it was so amazing, especially the Karka that you wrote. And I'm like, people need to know directly from the source. I wanted to make a video on it, but I'm like, nah, I want to go directly to the source, the master of Karkas. And I wanted to actually people to know the most simplest thing, which we miss, which you apparently show us how important they are, which is sun and moon. The Kark Avastha of sun and moon, what sun and moon are in astrology, Das. And I'm like, especially the way you describe it, I'm like, I just want to hear from Das. So show us, what is sun and moon in Jyotish through your perspective?
Let us start with the moon.
Yeah.
The moon is where you get your emotional comfort. It depends what sign it's in.
Okay.
That tells you where the things that sign rules is where you're going to get your emotional comfort, because the moon is emotional comfort. It's the Ras of life. And so in one of the 12 signs it resides, and those things of that sign is where that person will find their emotional comforts. Like, say, Virgo will find comfort in books. I have it in Aquarius. I find comfort in scientific stuff. That's why I'm a programmer. Aquarius rules computers, really.
Right.
The 12 signs. And the moon is also, of course, things like mother. It has a connection to real estate because Cancer is the natural fourth house.
Yeah.
So that is where, again, that is where you'll find your real estate. That is where you'll find your mother. Is in those things. The moon and the sun are your eyes, and the moon is a reflection of the sun. So the moon is softer. It doesn't radiate as much. Its transit is not as valid as other planets' transits, because even though it's close to us, it doesn't radiate. It's very absorbing.
Yeah.
So now the sun is very radiant. It's the strongest planet there is. In fact, it wakes people up and puts them to sleep. It's such a powerful astrological.
Yes.
Yeah. That's an astrological event, going to bed and getting up because of the sun's rays. So the sun, wherever he resides, there you'll find out more about your bodily nature. It is more of how you will radiate, just like the sun radiates, how you will radiate to other people, how you'll appear to other people. I appear Taurus to other people because I have sun in Taurus. Yes.
So it's what other may think of you with the sun.
Say that again?
With the sun, what other may think of you.
Yes, what others may think of you.
Ah, okay.
The sun is more our body than the moon is more our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the moon is mind and emotions. And so it can be afflicted a little more easily than the sun.
Yes.
If you have the sun with Ketu, it's not nearly as bad as having the moon with Ketu, which is quite intense. Ketu vat kuch, they say. Ketu is like Mars. So when the moon is with Ketu, it gets very fired up with caustic ideas. And when the sun is with Ketu, it doesn't nearly warble as much. It's not nearly as bad. The moon is very sensitive. That's the thing about the moon, is it's sensitive. The moon is taken, well, you know what, I got to dispel something.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken to be so important in Vedic astrology, but that's really because that's all people knew about their chart in the past. Long ago, people only knew where their moon was because you could see it. So people knew what nakshatra their moon was in and what sign it was in, but that's all they would know. And that's why transits are counted from the moon traditionally, is because that's all people knew, and that got put into the books. But actually, transits from the lagna are way more effective.
Wow, that is so true. So true.
Yes, very true. The lagna is much more of a sensitive point even than the moon. Well, the moon rules the mind, and really, you know, as one with some mental challenges, I have moon with Ketu. I know how sensitive the moon can be, but the lagna is the softest point. It's the fastest moving. We go from fastest moving to slowest moving, and in some ways, the most intense things are the fast movers, the lagna and the moon. They're very sensitive. They're the fastest movers. And as we get out to the slow movers, like Saturn, that's, you know, an afflicted Saturn doesn't affect your life as much as an afflicted lagna or moon. Yeah. Now the sun and the moon are the two eyes. I believe the sun is the right eye and the moon is your left eye. I've heard it both ways.
I've heard it both ways too. I thought it was sun, it was the left eye, but you know what? They're eyes. So yeah.
Yeah, there are luminaries. So
Now you were talking about the moon's conjunction with Ketu. What about Rahu? What if Rahu is with sun or moon? Then what happens?
well, I have a lot of realization about it with the moon, so I can speak to that well.
Mm-hmm.
Rahu with the moon makes, well, I tell you, first of all, Rahu is the coming up node. It's called the north node, and the Ketu is called the south node. That means when the moon is traveling up over the earth, when it crosses the ecliptic coming up, that is Rahu. When it crosses the ecliptic going down, that is Ketu. So I see it as Rahu is like a hand over the earth. I care. I'm taking possession of this situation and I'm going to do something about it. That defines Rahu. Rahu is active, the head of the serpent. Ketu is a dying, dead body that's dwindling away and floating off into space, like in the movie Gravity.
Yeah.
So Ketu is all about, I'm going away, I'm renouncing, I'm dying. Help me. Oh my God. So Rahu is active and passionate, and Ketu is declining, going away. So Rahu with the moon makes a person very intense. One Jyotish told me, and I agree, that these people will create problems where there are none. And that's true. People with Rahu moons are really into whatever is going on, and they have a comment about it, they have an opinion about it, and it's usually coming from left field. Some strange feeling.
Uh-huh.
Some strange feeling. Now, they say Rahu is like Shani, Saturn. So Saturn is the planet of problems, obstacles, and so forth. So Rahu with moon people will immediately come up with what the obstacle is. They'll come up with, here's an obstacle to whatever you're saying or doing. You know?
Okay, wow.
They'll create it.
Beautiful explanation. I love that. Yes, like they will point the obstacle out.
Yeah, they will. They will.
Will they create obstacles as well?
They seem to take joy in this.
Wow.
You know.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be achieved by creating obstacles. You can manipulate people that way, you know, by creating diversions to whatever's going on instead of smooth flow. You know, if you're the person who goes, wait a minute, but you know what? Hey, you can control the situation. So that's how I see Rahu. Whereas Ketu is more like, oh my God, I'm afraid. What am I going to do? You know, it's full of doubts and fears. Trump has Ketu and Moon conjunct closely, and he's very much a man that is defensive.
Yeah.
He's very afraid of many things. Now, I've seen it. Doesn't he have Jupiter in the first?
He has Jupiter in the sign of Virgo in the second house.
In the second. Well, I saw his chart with it in the first. There's some argument.
No, there's one with Leo ascendant. That's one like majority of the people are following. Leo ascendant with Mars in the ascendant, Jupiter's in the second house, Saturn, Venus in the 12th house, Mercury in the 11th house, Sun, Rahu are in the 10th house, and Moon, Ketu are in the 4th house. That is heavy. Like he's right there with the eclipse.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Now, this is what I wanted to say, is that Leo rising with Mars in it is going to make a person who's very strong. Of course, Jupiter in the second is real bhagya or fortune. But those tend to hide his moon Ketu, which is really a bad thing, but he's got such strong other placements that it overrides it somewhat. But what a defensive man, and that is fear. That is fear. He's not secure.
Yeah, that is very true. Yep.
But in business, the causticness of the Moon Ketu conjunction is good because, like I said, both nodes tend to be troublemakers. And in business, if you're a troublemaker, you can again manipulate and swing deals.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
And what about like Sun with Rahu? Does that have a severe effect as Moon with Rahu?
I haven't noticed it to be such in life myself. I would say that it does have an effect, but it hasn't stood out to me like people who have the moon with nodes. But the sun with a node, I would say, does affect.
Because it's a month-long, placement of the sun. So, yeah, it's not going to be like everybody's not going to be on their high horse with moon and sun and Rahu.
Everyone, I'm glad you brought that up because we have to remember that is how long is something in effect.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to define a generation.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a whole month. But I think that people with sun and nodes conjunct are going to be a little bit odd compared to the normal mass of their generation.
I see. Okay.
And I have definitely noticed, let's take that other sensitive point, the lugna. When the lugna is with the node, definitely it is the same effect as the moon with the node. It's almost the same.
Yeah, because you said soft, sensitive points.
That's right. Lugna with Rahu or Ketu is almost the same as moon. It's just that they embody it. They embody either the troublemaking aspect or the fear aspect. You know, they embody it more. They shake when they go through these things. It's not just their mind. It's not just their life force, but it's their body when it's the lugna. So I've had I had a marriage and then I had a long relationship. So I could say I have had two marriages and both of them had Rahu in the first and one of them has the moon there also. So I have some personal experience with these things.
Wow. That's why I'm like, I got to go to the expert who has experienced all these things.
My main two best friends both have the moon with a node just like I do. I tend to like people who have moon with a node because they're far out. That's one phrase that goes with moon with Ketu or Rahu is far.
But what about the aspects? Do you consider the aspects of the nodes?
I don't.
You don't, okay.
Yeah.
And also, does it really affect how far apart or how close they are? If let's say moon is at 20 degrees, but then Ketu is at 5 degrees, will that have a severe effect just as much as if they were 2 degrees apart or 3 degrees apart?
That, I've watched that and I found odd conclusions. People with the wide separation can be very afflicted, and people with close separation can be the same or less or slightly different type of affliction, but it's not clear that it gets more intense the closer they are. I've noticed that the signs boundaries really do work. And so if two things are in a sign together, they're in a sign together.
Okay.
That's what I've found to be true. It's not a fluid zodiac. It is a rigid zodiac is what I've found to be true. I found that when transits cross the lines, they change their effects. And I know that the actual rasis are sometimes larger than 30 degrees. Sometimes.
Yeah, that's what some people say. They're like this small and then this long, then one is this long and this short.
Yes. Yeah. But and I'm sure a lot of people will argue, oh, the 30 degrees is just for human convenience.
Yeah.
They say that about the padas and nakshatras. They say it about everything. But it's not what I found to be true. I found that I watched carefully in the Lugna in transit. I watched the Lugna in transit. And when it crosses over exact spots, things happen. Things literally happen. So I'm quite convinced about the rigid zodiac. And
how would you define that? How do you think a rishi would have really understood these boundaries? Like what happens with these boundaries? I mean, I know we can see them in the sky, but is there something scientifically, since you are very scientific and analytical, is there something scientifically proven between two zodiac signs, like the boundary? If there's maybe electromagnetic waves or how?
You know what I would say to that? I don't know of a thing to tell you exactly right now, but I can say this, being scientific. Light rays and radio waves, which are coming from the stars, okay, are rays have specific scientific aspects to them, and degrees are scientific. Light disperses out and it refracts at different angles, like in a crystal. You have to have the crystal angles exact to get the refractions right. You have to shave a diamond just right to get the refractions right. So I think the 30 degrees is actually a width that matters when it comes to rays. So, yeah, things at that point, at that 30 degree mark, things go and turn away or something. There's something about it that's real. Something about it that's very real in terms of rays. Because Jyotish runs on rays, waves, gravity. That's what drives Jyotish. The planets perturb each other's orbits. I don't know if you know that. There's a thing in NASA, you can look it up on NASA.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the perturbations of the planets.
Okay.
In fact, Uranus was discovered this way. Planets wobble in their orbits based on where the other planets are. The Earth gets pulled 60 miles out of its orbit when the sun and moon are on one side of it. The gravity, the collisional gravity of those two can pull the Earth so much. Wherever the moon is right over the Earth, right under the moon, the ocean water comes up 15 feet. This is what creates the waves and tides. is the moon's effect of pulling the ocean up by 15 feet. So when it travels over the USA and travels right over your head, you get lighter. All the mass in your body and water is literally pulled upwards. As the moon travels over a city, everyone gets lightheaded. They don't know it, but they do. It's true. That's a fact. That's a ray. That gravity is like a wave or a ray that is having factual effects on people's minds as it moves. On the earth, people weigh differently in different countries. The same person weighs differently in different countries. Some countries have a more solid mass of earth underneath them, where the gravity is actually more intense. Like I think Mexico is light and Norway is heavy, for example, and it's a small amount, but it's measurable. So masses, like planets and like the earth, they actually have gravity and it actually works. So the planets all perturb each other. They go wobbling in their orbits based on where the other planets are. So using that technique, NASA could tell that there was a wobble maker at a certain point. They could see through the orbits of the other planets, but they didn't know where is this wobble maker that we're missing. And that's how they found Uranus, was through the perturbations of the planets on each other. So if the planets can perturb the Earth 60 miles out of orbit, as it moves, it has to move a little bit at a time. So it goes,
Wow, okay.
So through the Earth, there's ripples. There's ripples of movement through the atoms, and those go through us. And as they reshape our head for a fraction of a second each day, we have thoughts that make us do things. And thus the planet's perturbations are actually what makes Jyotish work and what makes us have thoughts, because in our brain there's minute specks of heavy metals that will lean first, faster than other matter will, when it's time to move. Now, this cannot be argued by anybody. This is a scientific fact. The perturbations of the planets are scientific fact, and it happens to the Earth. And in fact, the moon is slowing the Earth down by its orbit. Against the spin of the Earth, the moon goes against it. The Earth is spinning, but the moon orbits in such a way as to make the oceans hit up against the coastlines opposite the Earth's rotation, such that in 50 million years, the Earth will stop spinning because of the moon.
Wow.
Yeah. So these are NASA-based, unarguable points that make astrology very real. Pink palms. That's a thing in palmistry. A famous palmist saw my hands and he took photographs of them because my palms are so pink. Anyway, so perturbations of the planets and the nature of the moon should make people think about, wow, astrology is real. And when the moon goes overhead, we go and get lightheaded. There's much more death on Ekadashi than on other days. Many more people die because the waters in us rise up due to the fact that it's a 120-degree angle between the moon and the sun on Ekadashi. So they're doing a double whammy, like the strings of a puppeteer. They're pulling from 120 degrees, which is like this. So it levitates things. So people get more phlegm, and old people die from that,
Wow.
And I have two nurse sisters who have worked in hospitals, and they say that it's very clear that on full moon nights, they get much more activity in the ER. Not just gunshot wounds, but everything. Everything. Everybody goes crazy on full moon nights.
Wow.
Because the moon and sun are opposed, so that does a strange pulley of gravity upon us that sort of pulls us apart. And so we come apart, we come unglued, and we have more troubles. Another thing I know for sure, I heard this from a very high person in State Farm Insurance Company, and they have everybody's birth data who they insure. And they ran their own little trip and found out that Scorpio sun people get in more car crashes than any other sun sign. State Farm knows that. So just based on your
That is so crazy. Wow. That an insurance company now knows that's November born people, Scorpio people, get into accidents.
Yep. Yep. And Scorpio is fourth from Leo.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 in 12 people born that month are going to have the first lord in the fourth in Scorpio.
Yes. And four thoughts is vehicles.
Yeah, and Scorpio is kind of a wild sign. It's not exactly grounded. It's watery and it's caustic. It's like gasoline. It's ruled by Mars.
Yeah.
But it's water. Fire, water. That's alcohol and gasoline. Alcohol and gasoline don't mix, but that's what Scorpio is, fire, water. And 1 in 12 people in that month have the first lord there, which means their body is entangled in a vehicular accident. So,
man.
Plus Leo rising people are just a tad full of themselves, just a tad. And so when they have first lord in the fourth in such a crazy sign, they're being full of themselves and not paying attention, and that's how it happens.
Wow. I never thought of that Scorpio as alcohol and petroleum.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah. Alcohol and gasoline.
Alcohol and gasoline. How can you interpret that in terms of like some of the Scorpion nature with this analysis?
Well, they're Scorpio rising people. Take, for example, Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee. They're both Scorpio rising. They're two famous karate stars. They both have Mars in the sixth in Aries.
No.
My son is Scorpio rising. When I think of Scorpio rising people, I think of people who are very jittery and defensive. That's something about Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, is the quick, defensiveness of karate. And I know my son very well, and he's that way too. He also has Mars and Aries in the sixth, just like both of them. He is greatly physical when he was younger. He could do breakdancing like crazy. So I think the way you can merge it in is that Scorpio has a tendency, no matter what, to be like fire, water, alcohol, and gasoline, to be a little bit shaky head, like alcohol, not real clear. Scorpio is zinging around, they zing around. And, but it's got juice behind it, gasoline. It's got plenty of power. Scorpio is really powerful, and it's a sexy sign, which is, again, kind of like fire, water, and gasoline. And it's basically slightly unstable, but very powerful.
Now, I remember when you were giving the analysis of how planetary wobble affects even our thoughts.
Yes.
How they're pulling. How do you think dashas work then, scientifically? Because when, a certain dasha starts, Vimshotri dasha starts, suddenly the person changes, we change. I've noticed changes in myself come in. How can you explain that from your perspective, the scientific perspective?
I've never thought of how to explain it, because none of us know where those lengths come from. So I tend to I've tend to back off from it. I've wanted to research it myself to figure out where those lengths come from. You know, the lengths of the dashas are fixed.
Yeah.
We don't know where on earth or space anyone got those. It's in the books.
Yeah.
It's ancient times, but no one has ever been able to figure out a correlation between, you know, the lengths of the rasis and the dashas, or, you know, the nakshatras, this or that, and the dashas. No one can figure out where those dasha lengths come from.
Yeah.
They just are, and they do work. They definitely work. I've been watching Jyotish for, 24 years. And especially at first, in the first decade and a half, I was watching so many charts of friends. I was much more social. And I saw very clearly when people changed dashas, they changed. And what I told them ahead of time came true. Like one thing I would always tell people who are going from Jupiter to Saturn is that the party's going to end. You know, that Saturn's more somber than Jupiter Dasha.
Yeah.
And they'll always come back and tell me that that's true. So, I mean, I know from so many experiences that the dashas are true. But do I have a scientific explanation for how or why they work? I'm at a loss like everybody else. You start in a nakshatra with its ruler, and you go from there. Well, one thing...
That's like a time clock.
It's a clock. You go in the dashas according to the nakshatras that your moon is in, is your starting dasha at the start of life. And then however far the moon is through that percentage you have left, and it can be translated into a certain length of dates because that dasha has a certain length and your moon is through there. So you got a mathematical ratio so you can figure out when the next dasha begins. And that's how softwares do it. And one thing's for certain is you're going through dashas in the order of nakshatras from your moon. So it's like a clock hand that moves at different speeds. You know, some nakshatras go, 6 years, 10 years, and other ones last 19, 17.
Yeah.
So
now you were saying how you told your friends, party's going to be over. In your case, I remember in one of your videos, you said you're in Mercury Mahadasha. But Mercury is a very social planet. Mercury wants to be out there. Mercury wants to socialize, do business. How do you think that Mercury made you more introverted and isolated than what its Karkavastha actually shows?
I think because of the uniqueness of Aries rising Mercury, being third and sixth lord, two negative houses. So Mercury is quite a negative planet for Aries rising. And I'm Aries rising. And so I also have moon with Ketu. So I have a slightly unstable mind. I just do. I don't mind saying that. It's not, people who have moon in Taurus, they've got strong minds. They can't be shaken off their course so easily. But if you have moon in Aquarius with Ketu like I do, then you can be, because it's an air sign and Ketu is a very airy effect. So you can really drift off with that. Now, so then the Mercury Dasha comes along and he's the disease lord for Aries rising. And so it brings out whatever diseases you have are brought out more in that Mercury Dasha. The other thing is my Mercury is combust very badly.
Okay.
I want to be social. But what happened in Mercury Dasha is that the mental stuff I suffer from stepped up more because he's the disease lord.
Disease lord, okay.
And also, I have it in the second, which is 12th from the third. So what that means is the third rules short distance travels, which is what social life is.
Yeah.
And so 12th is loss of. So loss of short distance travel. So that's a big thing. when you add disease, combust, loss of short distance travel. Also, the third is, in a way, third is courage. Loss of courage. I've become kind of feeble and homebound, and I look upon social interaction with great trepidation. So there's a lot of reasons. I don't even have a driver's license right now. There you go, loss of travel. Short
Loss of travel, wow.
I have Jupiter in the 9th in Sagittarius. When I was in Jupiter Mahadasha, I traveled the world multiple times. I went around the world multiple times to 27 different countries. And I was only 19. So I was fearless about long distance travel. And I've had delivery jobs where I delivered in a car, ran around in a car. So I've had times in my life where I was very travel oriented, short and long. But in this Mercury Dasha, it has all shut down. And it's made me very sad. I wish to be social. I have Venus in the 1st. I wish to be seen.
Well, Rahu's helping you right now.
Yes, Rahu.
This is our Rahu connection.
A foreigner.
Yeah, foreigner. There you go. Connection with a foreigner is happening. Have you tried doing any astrological remedies for the classics for Mercury to help your social and communicative and travel, energy?
I haven't myself, but other people have for me in terms of yagyas and homas. Because I'm a bit loved, tons of people have offered me remedies from afar that they're going to do this homa for me, yagya, whatever. So many have happened, I swear, so many have happened, I can't even remember them all. But even from those, I didn't notice an effect, to be honest. I don't know, there's something about me that's a determinist. In other words, I believe in fate. That's not an active thing, but it's a scientifically settled fact in my mind that determinism is real, because it's the root of Jyotish.
Yeah.
Jyotish hangs its hat on determinism. They're the same thing. So I don't believe we can step in and pay off the demigods unless it's allotted in your chart for it to work. Like I've said before, you can't meet an astrologer and get a good reading unless it's in your chart.
Unless you're destined for it. Very true.
Absolutely. And similarly, things are not going to improve for you if they're not supposed to. So people can come with lures, like, many women might wink at a man, but that man is not going to know all those women. So similarly, many things come along in life promising something, but they don't give. Not everything gives. So in terms of yagyas and homas and japa and all of this, for me, I'm the kind of person who stays steady on his track, no matter what. Now, if I sincerely put myself into some practice, I'm sure it would have an effect, but I've got to do it myself. So far, all the remedies were from other people.
What about like that? I mean, I know your Mercury's combust and is 12th from itself, but did you ever, from being an astrologer yourself, perhaps also look at its position in Navamsha and see if that could be of a help? Or do you consider that or no whenever you are judging?
I do consider it. My Navamsha describes me very well. And I got to say, it's one crappy chart.
Welcome to the club.
It's bad. My Navamsha is really a train wreck, except Jupiter and Mercury are in the 1st. But with Ketu again.
Well, that's why you are who you are.
Yeah.
You are this spiritual person.
That's one thing you asked about earlier. I should say I have Mercury with Ketu in the Navamsha. So Mercury Dasha is affected by Ketu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My program gives readings for the the Vargas. You can click on planets in the Varga charts and get the readings from the standard database as if it's the Rasi. And if you do that with Mind of Angsa, the readings that come up are really spot on.
Wow.
Mind of Angsa describes me, and so does my Rasi. But the Navangsa is slightly more embarrassing. The readings are a little more on the X-rated side. You know, they describe my foibles well. And whereas my Rasi looks kind of stellar, my Navangsa takes it down a shade.
So the true Das is hidden in the Navamsha.
Yeah, the faulty Das is in the Navangsa. In both, I have Moon aspected only by Saturn.
Okay.
And in a Saturn sign. In both. So I have a Saturnine Moon.
Now, that's a very interesting that you said about the aspect of Saturn on Moon. Do you also consider, because remember in very first chapter of Bhirat Parashara Hora Shastra, Parashara talks about Rashi aspects before even talking about planetary aspects. Do you consider Rashi aspects upon each other when studying?
I don't. That's very esoteric. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, that is like in the first chapter how movable Rashis will aspect the fixed Rashis. Dual Rashis will look at the dual Rashis. So I wanted to see if you ever dwelled in with that aspect of life.
I can't say I have. Not at all. So I have not a thing to say about it, but except to say that the BPHS, the book, Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, has many things in it that we all don't use, all of us. Because I went through it when programming, and gosh, there's
so much
in there. I mean, even, you know, if you ask honestly, which Jyotishis use the unequal and equal Bhava chakra, they may not even use any Bhava chakra. They just use the Rasi as the Bhavas.
Mm-hmm.
But the BPHS describes both the equal and the unequal Shripati Bhava chakra. I mean, you can get lost in that book in techniques. It's a what do you say? A compendium? It's a coalescing of so many techniques.
Yeah. And what about like, did you ever try studying like the effects of Ashtak Varga upon your chart and how may that affect?
I studied Ashtaka Varga briefly when I programmed it.
Okay.
I wasn't, I just wasn't that into it. And there's a lot of techniques that I don't use, but there's some I use that others don't use, like Vimshopak.
Vimshopak Bala.
Yeah, that's a very good Bala strength system.
Yeah.
It's really fundamental. It's basically how many houses in the Vargas is a planet in its own exalted, friend, debilitated sign.
Yeah.
So like my Jupiter is in 7 of its own. It's got the highest possible rating, actually. And my Jupiter Dasha was absolutely stellar in Jupiterian ways. I mean, it's at 9 degrees in the 9th, and the 9th sign, in its own sign. So it aspects the Lagna exactly. I have 9-degree Lagna. So same thing, same degree. Perfect 5th house aspect. And Jupiter Dasha was, it started out difficult, and it gave the bad effects first. Some planets give the bad effects.
Probably because yours is, I think, conjunct Saturn.
Yeah, it is conjunct Saturn.
Padak planet, yeah.
And, you know, bad things happened when the Dasha began. I lost my father really early. He didn't die. He was put in a mental home, you know, or to be exact, he was put in a veterans home.
Okay.
For veterans who have diseases. In his case, it was mental disease. My mother had to put him there because he had bad paranoid schizophrenia. But I was only 12, and that was really hard. And I had to take over one of his jobs. He had a few jobs, and that was really hard. And this was right when Jupiter started and it's in the ninth, and ninth is father, and I lose my father. Instead of it being a good Jupiter Dasha, it's acting like a bad Jupiter Dasha.
Yeah.
But things swung around at 13. Just a year later, they got better. And then later on, it got even better and better and better and better until it couldn't get any better. I was the servant of a guru in the Hare Krishna movement when he was in good standing. And I got the red carpet treatment all over the world when we traveled for a couple years. It lasted. Just incredible luck for free, traveling for free. I didn't have to work. Except I worked for the guru, serving
Right.
whatever. But I was in heaven. I was totally in heaven. So I had the ultimate experience of a Jupiter Dasha, that is working in a religious movement with a shaved head in an orange robe, traveling the world, being received everywhere in limousines and with garlands, The Hare Krishna movement was flourishing at the time. And I had an absolutely stellar experience, and it set up my life. It's what got me into Sanskrit and Hinduism and ultimately Jyotish. So my Jupiter Dasha really paid towards the end.
So that means anytime your Jupiter Antra Dasha comes, does that help you?
Yes.
Like in Mercury, Jupiter, has it happened yet for you or no?
Well, it's actually coming up.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm in Mercury Rahu at the very end. So Mercury.
No wonder you're here. Look at this.
This is a part of bringing on the good times,
Look at this. As above, so below. Jupiter is bringing the Jupiter out.
Yeah, that's right.
Your inner Jupiter is coming out. Wow. And Moon is transiting Sastabhisha Nakshatra today too.
Oh, it is?
All about occult and sciences all day today for me.
I usually watch the transits very closely, but I guess I took the last day and a half off and I forgot where the moon was. But that's typical. See, so you said moon's transiting Satabhish.
Sastabhisha Nakshatra. Yeah.
Okay, well, so that's my nakshatra where my moon is, and so
oh man.
That's I swear transits work. Transits work.
Transits work. Yes.
They work. They're activators. They make things happen. They really do. They make things happen. They're almost like the money on a gambling wheel. The wheel is spinning, but where you put down the money is where the action is, or where the ball falls. Transits are expensive, man.
Now, did you ever dwell into Prashna astrology?
I have some. I've read up on it some, and I've done it some. Yeah.
What are some of the techniques that you still remember that found it to be great?
One big one is First Lord in the 10th is a yes.
Okay.
Because if the question is the first house. And so if the First Lord goes to the 10th, which is rise, then that is a yes, it rises. The cake rises. But otherwise, I remember going that, first answer sun, second answer moon, third answer Mercury. There's an order like that sometimes people ask multiple questions in one prashna. So
yeah,
there's a way to take the order. And otherwise, I just always have read them like charts, but with a small twist that you remember that you're talking about a question.
Now, what if that 10th First Lord was debilitated in the 10th house? How would you?
That would be a little bit more difficult. I would say that it's a yes with difficulty.
Yes, with difficulties.
Okay. With difficulty. So, for example, yes, go ahead and build the house you're asking me about, but there's going to be trouble if you start at this time. I got to say that I've done some prashnas that have been followed to great effect.
Okay.
Some people have had C-sections based on prashnas that I did for them. Some people have moved into homes at a certain minute, you know, based on Prashnas, and they wanted certain effects and they happened. They got their effects because they followed my advice. And all I did was, you know, within the range of period of time that they gave me, you know, say 2 weeks wide, you know, whatever, I looked for over their chart the best possible transits. And then taking that, once I found that, I would take that as a chart and then try to make it the sweetest chart possible. But basically,
Oh, so the child's chart will actually do good for the parents.
yeah, correspond. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it comes down to lug nut. Now, one thing, doctors are really unreliable in C-section. So sometimes people wanted to follow and couldn't follow.
Yeah.
But on the rare occasion, they were able to.
Okay.
There was many other Prashnas, and some of them just came fabulously true.
Wow. That's
one guy wanted to be the center of his society, like it was a cult situation. He wanted his new house to be the center, and he followed it, and it became the center.
that probably had something to do with the sun. Sun being in the first house and doing that as okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I wanted to actually revert back to your dashas we were talking. How was your Saturn dasha? How did that affect you?
As soon as it started, I moved out of temples, which was Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right then I had to move out of the temples and get jobs. And Saturn's the worker, Shudra.
Yeah.
It was because of my children being a certain age. It was a certain moment where it just became important that I move out of the temples and get jobs, get a job, and make a living and be a father with a house. It was time. I had to. And so that was the first thing. It was very impactful entrance. Bam. Now then, I rose and rose. In any job I got, I rose. And I taught myself programming in Saturn Dasha, and I did really good with programming accounting software for 7 years. And then one day I picked up a Jyotish book, May 27th, 1993. I picked up a Jyotish book. Yeah. And it was the 27th of 5 in 9-3. Those are all key numbers of Jyotish.
2753.
Yeah, and 9.
9.
52793. It's so great. 3 times 9 is 27.
Yeah.
And there's actually 5 planets.
5 planets.
Yeah. And 2 luminaries.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 nodes.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's also 5 fingers. I mean, 5 is a very fundamental number in life. There's 5 appendages off the torso, you know, 2 arms, 2 legs.
Yeah.
I picked up Nalini Kanta, Tom Hopke's book, and I was already familiar with Jyotish. I'd already had my chart read long before in the Hare Krishna movement. So I knew Jyotish existed, but I didn't have any great particular opinion about it or anything. But one blank afternoon, I picked up this book and I started looking through it, and I just fell in love with the words of Jyotish and the concepts. And that book has in it how to do your chart manually. And I read through that chapter and I immediately went, I could program this. And so I started my program on that very day. I actually opened up a new program and named it Goravani Jyotish on that very day. And I ran downtown to a bookstore and got the other books I needed, which he told me in the book to get, you know, that I'll need an ephemeris, an atlas that has the longitudes and latitudes in it, and the table of rising signs so that you can do the ascendant. So I bought these other books and I did mine and my family's charts manually. And then I started programming. By the next morning, I had my first printout done, but you had to put in where the planets were at this point. It didn't do Jyotish. It was just an entry screen.
Okay.
But within a year, I started selling it, and it did by then have everything in it. So that's very fast, actually. Saturn Dasha was amazing for work. And I made a lot of money in Saturn Dasha. And I made a lot of money from Jyotish for quite a few years from the software. I started it in 93, started selling it in 94. And I started writing in 94. And my writings took off on alt astrology on the web, this old site, this old list.
I'm telling you, back in 2003 or 4, when internet was just like a baby, we still had those, fuzzy photographs. The very first page of Google actually showed your website on an article on Sun. And it was your website. And since that period, I remember I was in a cubicle in a mortgage company, because that's all I did. I didn't work. I was on the computer searching for astrology. So you and a couple of other people came, and so I clicked on it. And since then, I remember, because in one of your web pages, you had those long dread hairs with a beard, looking like a grunge rock star.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, who is this person? Then somehow, leading to 2008, on YouTube, I started searching for astrology, and lo and behold, who comes up first? Das Goravani talking about, in your dreaded hair, about like the Mars killing with a machine gun.
Yeah.
That was the very first video I saw of you on YouTube.
I just watched that today again for the heck of it.
Yeah, I'm like, he's like doing that, and then there's the one where you're talking about the circle like this in the black clothes.
Yeah.
Those were your two, and those videos were like, you were like pretty much the only one there back in 2009. And that's the geniusness of you. You knew where YouTube will be.
Yeah.
What it will become. You were just, I'm just going to put it. And I'm like, man, this guy just knows. He's up to the trends.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't deny it. I thought YouTube was a fantastic thing, and I thought it was a great way to get exposure and to show people what you can do and what you're about. And the clip with the black clothes is from a DVD set I made in 1998 that I'm still selling.
I'll show it.
I'm just shipping off a box of them to my friend who ships them for me. And so a 3 DVD set I made in 98, which it used to be on videos, not DVDs.
Wow.
So it was 3 videos. We used to ship this box with 3 videos in it for $50. Now we ship 3 DVDs. We still are. They still sell. And it's almost 20 years. And I made it in 3 days. And the black cloth video is from that. That's part of my 3 days of filming.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
You had those the teardrop letters coming. Boing,
Yeah.
boing, boing. I'm like, man, he's got the effects going. Because back in 2007, when I came across your video, I'm like, man, how does he do that? What software is he using? You got like these like drops.
I know, they're going.
Yeah. Boing,
There's water
boing.
droplets, and yeah, that was an effect that was a standard part of some movie software.
Oh, okay. So you actually had this. Okay.
I don't remember what movie software it was.
Wow.
Yeah, I loved that little effect.
And it's so funny now that you're in, I think, Mercury, Rahu, you started programming your software again. And now your software is like in a completely revamped new shape.
Yeah, very debugged. It was a little buggy in J3. For so many years, it sat buggy. And finally, I got up the nerve to just dig in and debug it.
And now what is your website again where people can get your software?
Goravani.com. My last name, Goravani.com.
Okay.
That's where my software is, and it's on sale.
And people don't even realize you're going to be in Sedona.
I'm going to be in Sedona.
You're going to be hanging out with all of us.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is under the starry night. Oh my God, I can't wait. 6 months is too much.
Actually, you're the main person I want to meet there.
I need to meet you. I just need to like just give you the biggest hug possible, man.
Of course,
Wow.
this video technology we have these days is so good. I can see you so HD. It's like I'm right next to you. So,
Exactly.
but in person is cool.
No, in person it'll be just magical because so many people will be there. Josh, you're gonna feel the energy. Like that energy is gonna like. I love it. And Sedona is so beautiful, especially the Poco Diablo where we're staying.
I've been there.
Beautiful place. Right in the morning, you wake up to this orange sun hitting the red rocks.
I know. Sedona is so beautiful.
Wow.
I know. Poco Diablo is a nice place. I've been to 2 Jyotish conferences there, the last one being in 2000. So it's been 17 years.
17 years. Mercury Dasha.
Yep.
17 years.
17.
Finally, I think Sedona is going to be that stepping stone now.
But my Mercury Dasha started in 05. So I've got a few years to go in it. But
yeah. So that's, I just wanted to remind people again that if you want to learn the essentials of astrology, like starting from ground up and building, please get these books. And this will definitely help my main man, my great friend, and one of the great teachers, Das Goravani. So please get these from Amazon.com. And your software is already there with all these Navamsha programming. So, I mean, I'm excited for that. So, Das, I apologize for taking so much time of yours, but thank you so much for coming. And I'll probably bring you back again soon. I mean, come on, it's 6 months, but it's gonna be awesome. We're gonna do beer pongs instead.
That'll be new for me.
Oh, that's it. It's gonna be pillow fights and beer pongs. We're gonna be doing it.
Me and alcohol don't know each other.
Oh, I'll introduce you. Don't worry about that. Let me be the middleman. Thank you, Das. Namaste.
Namaste.